Well, joining me now from our Cape Town studios for more on this is arms deal activist Terry Crawford-Browne. Mr. Crawford-Browne, evening to you and thank you for chatting to us. Yet another postponement to this inquiry. What's your response?
I'm afraid I'm not surprised. On Friday morning when I spoke to my lawyer Paul Hoffman, we said anything could happen between Friday morning and this morning, and this is just a further indication that the Commission, I regret, has degenerated into a circus.
Do you think any of the reasons given warrant a postponement today?
Well, when I was in the Commission's offices in February, I found it was completely shambolic. They were floundering in papers, some of them classified, some of them not classified. But I don't think that's the issue at all. They just are at sixes and sevens. As we know from Mr. Moabi, there's a so-called second agenda that the Department of Defense has now raised this question about classified documents. Did crop up in February, so they've had several months to deal with that. But it actually takes me back to the Cameron Commission of Inquiry into Arms Corps of 1994-95, when they were screaming about classified documents on South Africa's exports and what became known as the Log 17, when South Africa was exporting weapons to China but not to Russia, to Albania but not to Romania. And the Department of Defense was going absolutely ballistic about the prospect of that stupidity. Oh, Scotland was classified as a separate country. The Department of Defense and the securocrats were just going crazy at that time, and I'm afraid this seems to be rather a repeat of that.
Given what you've just described, you say the situation is shambolic. We've seen these delays and we've also seen these resignations. How much confidence do you have in this process that we as South Africans will ever get to the bottom of this?
I have no confidence in the Commission, I'm afraid. You recall that President Zuma very reluctantly appointed the Commission because I'd taken him to the Constitutional Court, where his legal counsel were totally unable to rebut the mountain of evidence of corruption around the arms deal. Huge quantities of evidence on BAE, on the German frigate consortium, submarine consortium, they simply couldn't rebut. And apparently 2 days before he announced the Commission, he told the National Executive Council of the eNCA that he was going to appoint the Commission because it was a means of him controlling it, rather than have it being dictated to by the Constitutional Court. And I'm afraid 2 years later, he's now hoist on his own petard, that it's become shambolic. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't investigate this further. 7 books have already been written about the arms deal. I wonder whether the Commission members have even read them yet. So there has been a lot of information already that has come out. And the issue, I believe, is that the arms deal was unconstitutionally legal, fraudulent right from inception. There are 6 terms of reference. 3 of them deal with offsets. That absurdity that if we spent 30 billion, we'd get 110 billion back, that would create 65,000 jobs. That has been totally discredited, even by the Department of Trade and Industry. And the international remedy for fraud is to cancel the contracts, return the equipment, and get the money back. And in the process, we would obviously also get the bribes back because they would have been built into the price. So that is a matter of political will. We could actually address that issue immediately if only there were political will to do that.
In your view, if you were to single out any individuals who have significant questions to answer here, who would they be?
There would be former President Thabo Mbeki, former Finance Minister Trevor Manuel, who signed the loan agreements for the contracts, and Alec Erwin, who was Minister of Trade and Industry, who drove us into this absurdity of the offsets. That the more we spent on weapons, the more we would get back. And then, in addition to our government leaders, the leaders in Britain and Germany and Sweden, who put huge pressure on our government to buy weapons we didn't need, couldn't afford, which, for instance, the South African Air Force in July 1997 had given notice that the BAE proposals were both too expensive and unsuited to our requirements. Mm-hmm. And the former Secretary for Defense, Pierre Steyn, resigned in 1998 rather than taking responsibility for the shambles of selecting BAE equipment for which price had been removed from the tendering requirements. So it's our government, but even more so the European governments who pushed us in violation of the European Union Code of Conduct on Arms Exports, because they were fully aware of the social issues that we faced in South Africa, and irrespective of that, they pressured us, and then were colluded in the bribes.
Of the South African role players, very briefly, Mr. Crawford-Browne, do you think, given the way that the Commission is structured at the moment, given the way this inquiry is structured, will we get those answers?
Not from the Commission, but a lot has already come out into the public domain, thanks to the books that have been written. But I think the Commission is unfortunately intended to prolong the cover-up rather than get to the bottom of it. And it is deliberately chasing red herrings rather than, and in so doing, deviating from the terms of reference.
The defence analyst Helmut Heitmann was quoted over the weekend saying, regardless of how this proceeds, it's all far too late, because if anyone benefited as a result of corruption, they would have long hid the trail of that anyway. What do you make of that?
Well, he was part of the grouping that got us into this mess, but it's not too late, because the BAE loan agreements only fall due, they run until 2019. And in terms of the remedies in case of bribes clauses in both those contracts and the German frigate and submarine consortium contracts, South Africa has the right summarily to cancel the contracts and claim compensation. So the financial consequences would then fall to the German and the British taxpayers rather than us. And we might even claim compensation for damages suffered because of the bribes paid by both the British and the Germans. The Germans have already, ThyssenKrupp has already paid a plea bargain fine of 46 million euros, and Ferrostahl's new management admits that yes, their former management had a whole department that specialized on how to pay bribes to win contracts in so-called third world countries. BAE has paid a bribe of $479 million in the States for all kinds of bribery issues. Unfortunately, our government is trying to back away from taking up this issue. The former director of the national prosecutions, Mindy Simulani, refused to seize about 200 million rands worth of bribes that BAE had paid to Fana Shangwana, which the Principality of Liechtenstein had seized, had frozen, pending seizure by South Africa, but Simulani said there was insufficient evidence to prove the case.
Thank you. There we'll have to leave it. That was arms deal activist Terry Crawford-Browne. Of course, that inquiry resuming now on the 19th of August.
News that moves. eNCA.com.